Welcome back to the Conquer Athlete podcast I'm your host, Tyler Cooke. And joining me today, I've got my co-host, Ryan Bucciantini, the one and only, and Jason Leydon.
There we go.
I flipped it. Y'all saw that?
There we go.
Tried to be respectful.
Flipped it.
If you don't get that, you need to go back to last week and listen to last week's episode. And also like, comment, and subscribe so you never miss a podcast episode drop.
Seriously. We're really bad at that. We're like,
we need to get our numbers up.
Listen if you want. So what are we talking about today, boys?
Besides Epstein files, how about he walked in on the call, put his headphones on, and goes, dude, the Epstein files.
It's crazy. And you know what's crazy too? Like, this is what they're allowing to come out.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Dude,
they're dripping you exactly what they want you to know.
This is 100% curated.
Yeah, there's the real shit is being held for blackmail.
Yeah.
No. They already
at a
said
very,
they
very
were
high
like,
level.
we held back the murder, rape, and torture. So what you're saying is there's murder, rape, and torture in
Yeah.
You just told us
in the
that
videos.
Right.
Like, you just played your card.
Yeah. But I think they're more like they didn't want us to know who was murdering, raping, and torturing.
Yeah, totally.
Meaning it's somebody. Imagine the amount of power you got to have to be able to keep that out.
Bro.
Jay, I texted Ryan using an athlete as an avatar that, and by the way, this is a backstories last week. If you haven't listened to our last week's episode, go back and listen, like, comment, and subscribe. Last week, there were moments in that podcast, and I told our good friend Owen later, I said, hey, for the first time after doing this podcast, I looked up and it was very clear that I did not belong in this conversation because the two of you guys got so high level that I became simply student note taker, which was a great experience for me to be able to sit back and just listen to you two really brainstorm at a high level. So along those same lines, I'm more inquisitive on how you two would go about taking an athlete. I'm going to use this athlete as an avatar. Let's assume for a second they're really good at gymnastics, got all the skills. We're talking games level athletes, right? So how do an athlete comes to you and says, Jay, Ryan, I want to take the next level, whatever it is. All the skills, let's assume for a second, very good positioning on everything, gymnastics-wise, no problem. If it's a female, she's got a 200-pound snatch, 250-pound clean and jerk, like strong enough. Oh, top-end strength, right? Power output on machines, crazy through the roof, really powerful. And then I'm going to call it, and Ryan, I guess this is in my text, I was maybe not clear. I'm going to say, like, this athlete is aerobic. Like, it's not somebody you look at and like, they get tired going up the stairs. This person can clearly breathe and can clearly breathe for periods of time. But in workouts, I notice a half a step behind, and maybe it's certain movements, but what I notice over looking at it in this setting would be repetitive, dense movements, big set of pull-ups, big set of wall ball. We did a chipper, wall ball, toe to bar, burpee box jump over type, where you've got so a chipper setting, you're so dense on one movement, you don't have the ability to switch and transition. And so in my mind, and this is the educational part of me, it's asking two-part. Number one, where do we think this athlete is deficient? And I know I'm giving you very little back-end information, so you're kind of going to have to make some assumptions. But is this athlete deficient? I look at it right off the bat, and I'm saying that's more of a muscle endurance issue that this person's got to work up because it was not workouts that were pretty continuous 4 rounds per time type. It was like the chipper workout. It was a very dense set of gymnastics that became problems. So I look at that as they have a muscle endurance issue, which could be paired with or the same thing as, again, y'all are going to say it better than me, as someone that has an inability to clear fatigue, right? And so you get in these situations where all of a sudden that lactate builds up from the 90 wall balls into now you've got a dense set of toes to bar, and we've got to break our toes to bar a little earlier than we want to because we're probably dealing with lactate that built up in the wall balls. It didn't show in the wall ball. The wall ball sets you maintained and were fine. It showed in the toes to bar, and then it showed in the next set of burpee box jump over. So my question for y'all is two-part. Number one, am I on the right thinking that person is, again, aerobics really not the issue? In another workout, 40-minute workout, into the workout, this particular girl pulling over 2,100 cows on a rower. Like, clearly she's got top-end gears and can breathe. We're 40 minutes in. She's not stopping, that kind of thing. But there is a muscle endurance thing, and also back part of that is how do we fix that over a period of time?
All right, so I'm gonna let Ryan go first. I know he I know he's got some good stuff. I can see him brewing, so I'm gonna let him rock.
Yep. And like I said, that's a lot of information thrown with very little background, so you're gonna have to make some assumptions.
Yeah. Well, first, I think we need to clarify what aerobic actually means, because it doesn't really mean anything in the big picture of things. But that was my first question, was what was she feeling specifically? Was it localized fatigue, systemic fatigue, or like lungs versus muscular fatigue? Which it sounds like it was more of like a localized localized fatigue. So realistically, when I would want to address this and how you've described the athlete is this is definitely a clearance issue, right? She sounds strong enough. I think the first thing I would want to look at is you want to check the box on like long cyclical pieces, something that doesn't require a high contractile force. And we want to isolate, okay, is this a lung issue or is this actually a muscular issue? Like, is this a contraction volume issue? So you saying that she's aerobic, I'm going to say that we can check that box of like cardiovascular output, like she's on par where she needs to be from a monostructural standpoint. So thinking strategy wise, I would look at taking her from long cyclical pieces to what we would kind of call like continuous mixed modal pieces, right? So for her and for this person, I have no idea who she is. She's probably super high output. Like you said, she can hammer on machines, right? She's got huge top end strength numbers. So she's probably very glycolytically developed from an energy systems perspective. So from a strategy perspective, you want to focus on just keeping her moving for extended periods of time, focusing on like zone 1, zone 2 work, right? Which hard at this kind of point in time in the season. I would look at from a program design perspective, looking at light to moderate loads, and you actually not never, but for a long period of time from a training block perspective, there's really no reason to have her hitting like max effort lifts to redlining and conditioning. You want to actually pull really far away from that and teach her how to train herself to become more efficient. And when we're thinking about training modalities, active rest is going to be more beneficial than just like standing rest periods of like full recovery. Like, hey, do this thing and then rest X amount of minutes.
Got a 3
like
minute.
Exactly. Like you want to take whatever the priority item is that you're trying to develop, you have her hit that piece, and then you step into active rest where we're looking at kind of like flushing the byproduct, like flushing the fatigue out of her. And lactate isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's retraining the body to use lactate as a fuel source. So you're building fatigue and then you're teaching and training the body how to clear fatigue. So that's why the active rest portion is super important to this. And Jay, 100% stop me if there's something you want to add to this before I get too deep into the rabbit hole.
No,
but
I figure like keep going, go down your rabbit hole, and then I'll just jump in when you're done.
Okay. So when I think about this, I think about capacity, and when I think about capacity, I'm thinking about contraction accumulation. Right. That in my head, that's kind of how I define it. So when I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about overall like functional volume. I know there's a lot of people in the sport who don't like the term functional volume. It makes a ton of sense to me. Like you have to accumulate a ton of low intensity volume in a specific movement before you can add intensity to it. Right? Like that's how we become efficient. That's how we train the body to optimize energy utilization in my head. So when I structure something like this, I'll start with my priority one item, right? Whether that's like an EMOM, whether that's a couplet or whatever that is. And I build to that line of functional volume, right? So I kind of build up to that point where it starts becoming unsustainable, or like right to that line of unsustainable. And now what do you do in that? You may be able to rest and then go through and add more, right? Potentially increasing their capacity, but eventually you're going to get to the point where you can't keep doing that thing, right? Depending on how high skill that movement is. So what do? You back off. And now this is the time that you actually get to drive their GPP base, right? You go back to developing the foundation. So I'll use lower skill, lower load exercises that still kind of focus on that same area. And I'll drive up their work capacity through another piece. And what I do over time is you build this huge foundation of priority one items and then other exercises that are similar in nature, but still allow for efficient movement, still allow for energetic output, and slowly build, kind of bridge that gap over time. So maybe the next week, my priority one item will stay the same, but I'll make that GPP style work just slightly harder. And I'll start to bridge that tolerance until we get to a bigger base of just priority one items.
Not how quickly you can do that, because obviously you can do that. I've seen you over the last 4 years of working together. You've moved different needles at different times. If you had this athlete that kind of checks, what I'm going to say is, like, again, I'm thinking layman's level, not quite as in depth as you two, but if she's got all the skills and she's strong enough, to your point, she could not touch a barbell for 3 months and still be one of the stronger ones in the game. So that's a God given, like, oh, great, we don't have to get a whole lot of touches there. How long of a period of time do you have to get to the point where you're really kind of, call it full cycle through that? Wouldn't you say the aerobic side and everything we're talking about, when I use aerobic, I'm talking about just that big bucket of breath work and blood flow. Is that a needle you can move over the course of months? Or is this something you're talking like, I mean, obviously full develop might take longer than that to go through certain seasons of it. And so what I'm getting at is over the course of, I don't know, randomly, arbitrarily 6 months. Is that something you can really start to move the needle on? Or is that something that just takes longer to build?
No, I think so. Okay. So you have to look at what the disparity is, like how bad is the problem?
Sure, how big of a gap?
That's obviously gonna.
In my mind, we're not talking about a huge deficiency here. We're talking about a half a step that we
Well,
need to
no,
close
I
the
mean,
gap on. It's not.
if this person has already reached this level of the sport, right? There's obviously muscular endurance there. Like,
There's
you
a
can't
base
make it
there.
you can't make it this far in the sport without having that base. So okay, so clarifying that, yeah, I think you could make meaningful gains in a training block or two, for sure. Really, it comes down to what can they recover from, like how
To be able to go back
frequently
and keep building on top of it.
yeah, like how frequently can you throw this in? Like something like this is probably going to be relatively fatiguing. So you're looking at probably 2 days max of
A week.
like a well-structured program that you can like realistically fatigue manage this, knowing that your capacity training is arguably going to develop a lot of soreness. So you have to take that into account in what your other days are going to look like. Like if you're super hyper focused on one localized area, that's going to have an impact on other areas, right? Like you're definitely not snatching as heavy. Like if you're something where you're like, hey, I'm super tricep focused, right? You're working on pushing or something, that's going to have an impact. So you're going to have to pull back and you're going to have to dial back in other areas to account for that fatigue if you're really trying to drive, adaptation.
That makes sense.
That's my
Right,
TED
more?
talk. No,
I love it.
Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have too much more to say. I feel like I'm just kind of talking for the sake of talking right now. I think Ryan hit everything. Ryan hit everything on the head with what he's saying going through it. Because I don't know anything about who this person is, what their training looks like, or what's happening with anything. I would always say, what's their body type? Because body type has some sort of level of energy expenditure around specific dynamic contractions or movements, right? So we have
25, just as a guess.
Yeah, so I mean, we have to take that into account with the movement and what the movement's being paired for from a contractile standpoint and an energy expenditure standpoint, because energy dependency can be based around movement depending upon the type of athlete they are, reps, sets, intensity, and what's accompanying with it. I do need to know a little bit more about what her energy system balance is and what her training has looked like leading up into these tests and these workouts that you guys are doing, because that can also give some indication of what's being deficient and what hasn't really been utilized or built in efficiently to get her where she's at. What does the training look like going into these sessions? Is it someone that's just completely clobbered with intensity and volume every single day, and then they go into these sessions and it's, so her level of recovery, because you think about it, you're tackling on the most intense, physically demanding part of her training at the end of the week, right?
Yep.
So if her week's already smashing her, that's a tough indication to get an idea of like really where she's really at, what her real levels are. And that's just poor programming, and then it's like, okay, well, what are the dynamic contractions that really create the biggest levels of fatigue in her, right? And we understand that around her body type, her age, her training history, the type of athlete she is, her energy system balance, and then her training leading into it, you then get a better understanding of what her true limiters are, and then building those limiters like Ryan said. Whereas raising her aerobic base, as needed, and then refining her ability to tolerate and shuttle lactate, right? Because lactate's a fuel, and we know that the essence of that discomfort and the burning and the fatigue settles in from our bodies, not ability to shuttle it and utilize it as fuel fast enough based off intensity. So then excess hydrogen ions pool, that creates the burning sensation, the fatigue, the stalling that athletes go through. So then using just progressive overload principles, we want to move that needle between intensity and volume around these limiters inside set prescriptions to drive her ability to tolerate and shuttle based off different various methods. And there's plenty of different methods that people can utilize for that, right? But from a 50,000 foot view, that's kind of like that overview and breakdown I would go through with that. And then once they get a clear understanding, you then kind of progress and build it. And, going along your previous question about how long does it take, i.e. 6 months, the thing with these athletes is like the accumulation has already been stacked in their training over the past days, weeks, months, years, right? So it's not like you're starting from scratch. It's like Ryan said, 2 training blocks to acquire some form of adaptation. I agree with. I think depending upon how we're doing it. But the tricky part is, Tyler, in these situations is it comes down to that collective stress applied, that chronic level of stress that's being put on this person when this out of her current programming. And if things aren't aligned well based off what the needs are, then there's going to be the interference effect that can pull from her ability to drive adaptation on what this goal is and her ability to shuttle it. And if the coach looking at it isn't looking at it from this perspective, and it's sort of like just, wads on wads and training on training without true purpose of developing this limitation for them, then it's never going to improve, depending upon no matter how much time you have, right? And they'll keep kind of bottlenecking around this demand. So that's where I'd go with it.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to that, like intensity is going to be the thing that's going to put her in a huge deficit and is going to limit her adaptations to this. This is not knowing the person. It's going to be a hard pill to swallow because they actually have to feel like they're being undertrained. Like they're more than likely going to have to do less day to day, and there's going to be more light sessions included throughout the week to realistically recover from this, because you're trying to create really specific adaptations. You're not trying to get stronger, you're not trying to get faster, you're trying to become more volume tolerant, and to become more volume tolerant, the intensity needs to be lower. So she should actually feel really, really good throughout the week if it's programmed specifically. Like she'll have some localized soreness from like focusing on specific areas, but from a systemic fatigue standpoint, it should actually be pretty low.
Yeah, like she should be coming into the weekends like chopping at the fucking bits to do stuff, right? Because you think about it, right? What's her height, weight again?
5'8", 175, and a lean 175. She's just built like a brick shit house.
So she's lean, tall and lean.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
she's thick, strong-wise, but not slender by any chance.
You also then have to look at it from, like I was talking about, an energy expenditure and movement. And what's the movement and what's the energy demand of the movement for this person, right? It's like if you took the three of us and let's say Ryan and I were heavily trained on the rower, and we're like, all right, guys, we're a team of 3 and the only workout is rowing, right? Ryan and I be like, dude, fucking Tyler's fit, but fuck, man, he's just like dragging the needle on us on this fucking row workout, right? And
sure,
at that point, it's just like, all right, if Ryan and I each, 6'2", 6'3", 220, 235, it really doesn't matter what you do. If we're all equally levels of fit, based off that, you're still going to fucking beat us. Vice versa, if we're running, right, you're going to be flying by us, and we might be dragging ass, exerting more energy, being more tired and fatigued, especially based off the pairing and what's to follow, right? So that's going to have to come into play for you guys as you look at breakdown and workouts if things don't change or adjust, and who knows if they will or won't, because we don't have any control of what she's doing to improve upon it. But you have to look at that and be like, okay, like what's going to be her demand of what's happening, and how can we best mitigate the damage so there's no unnecessary energy leakage, so we can keep her strong for the other stuff based on what our goal is. Because the goal is to win the games. There can't be fuck ups. There can't be setbacks. You got to be like top 10 everything, for the most part. So,
I get it. And that's the part where, like, again, to be clear, this is something we're talking about for our team is like, if one team member is half a step, half a step is not, we didn't stop. None of these workouts stopped. It was just they slowed down. Well, you can't slow down and try to win the games, right? It's got to be just charging forward.
Yeah. Especially that level. Like, I look at like Tudor and the World Fitness Project, right? He did great, finished 5th, but he podiums and he fights first place if 2 workouts had a 1 second or 2 second difference.
Which
right?
is
It's like that's
tiny on a workout like that.
Yeah, at that level, it's literally a rep. It's literally a second, which could determine podium or no podium.
Yep. What's funny, Ryan, you talked about the taking a step back almost, and it feel like, so there's this something inherent in us as athletes where we feel like we got to be doing more and all this. And it became a running joke all weekend that I was like giving her shit that she kept saying, all I do is train 3 days a week. And I just go to the noon class and because my training looks different or whatever. And then we would get done with a piece and I would be nasal breathing, just pat on the back. Hey, how'd that go for you? I'm pretty rested because I only did 3 days this week. And then we're going to train again this weekend. We're talking and she's like, Tyler, surely you're not taking Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday off. And I was like, I might. I don't know. Do you want me to be fresh next weekend? Because I'm playing the weekend game. I can give a shit about Monday, Tuesday. And so there's something though inherent in this. And I think what I have is this built up trust with you, Ryan, over 4 years where like, look, how do you feel? That's what I need to your point, when it gets game time, whether that's training weekend or the Open's coming up, Wadapalooza's coming up, or the game season, those are all I care about. And so it's like, how do I get as fresh and as chomping at the bit as I can? But getting an athlete that's new to the program, how do you convince that person without 4 years of trust, which you and I had? We're like, hey, I'm going to be great. Ryan knows what levers to pull. This new athlete, you're saying, hey, we're kind of going to go counterintuitive to most people. We're not just going to run our head through a wall. You're going to take steps. It's not steps back. It's just changing the way it looks, I think. That's a tricky conversation to have.
Okay. Well, here's what I think the first problem is I think there's a lot of coaches out there who aren't having real honest conversations with their athletes and they don't want to get fired, right? So if the athlete's like, I want more, they're
just give them more.
Both parties are part of the problem within that. But, in your example of like, okay, well, all of your intensity this week is going to get thrown into the tail end of the week. What do I need to give you in the early parts of the week? Like, it's not like we need to practice barbell cycling. You don't need to do more chest to bar or like anything like that. So, now it just comes down to filling space, and now I'm just adding junk volume to take away from the actual training stimulus that's coming down to the tail end of the week. So why wouldn't I want you super fresh, super prepared to hit the actual thing that's going to move the needle from a competition standpoint versus just throwing a bunch of arbitrary shit at you so you feel like you're doing something on the front end of the week? I think that's a huge problem in our sport. Like, you hit the nail on the head. Like, athletes feel like they need to do something every day. No, you should actually focus on recovering harder, being better, adapting to the training that you've already done, and putting 150% of your effort into the stimulation training days that are designed to push you deeper into the sport.
Well, the funny part about that is it got to the end of the weekend and I probably felt, I don't know if I'm the best, but I felt great. I could have trained Monday, but I felt awesome. Body felt great. Wasn't beat up, wasn't tired, wasn't sleepy. Like, oh shit, maybe this works.
But it's like, why train on Monday? Like, you just banged hard for 3 days. Yep. What is the point? You can't make the argument to me that I'm going to throw some like light recovery flow work to you that isn't adding more systemic fatigue to the system versus just chilling and recovering, eating really well.
It's still
focusing
stress, right?
Focusing on dialing in the week, like making sure your family, your wife, your kids, the business are all taken care of. So you lower that total systemic stress of the system. So you can then put all of your energetic energy into training to come. It's just a different way of thinking.
That was good.
Well, guys, we hope you enjoyed our show today. I think we got a lot of good nuggets
and covered some current events.
Hopefully we didn't offend anybody.
Yes.
If you get offended by that, you need to look in the mirror.
Fair.
You need to look in the mirror.
Okay.
All right. As always, check out the Coach Arcs podcast. Candace has this amazing job. Lots of great coaches, lots of great podcasts there. If you guys have something specific you want us to go over, feel free to check it out. If you guys are coaches and you want to further enhance your ability to understand how to properly write programs that aren't just effective, but correct for the athlete. Check out the Conquer Athlete Coaching Mentorship. We have those on the webpage. When the next one is dropping, you can jump on a call with Ryan or myself and go through the exact details of it. And if you're an athlete out there and you want to feel heard and you want a program that's written for you with great communication and feedback, then check out the Conquer Athlete Individual Design Mentorship. And as always, like, share, subscribe, as Tyler said. We'll see you guys in the next one.
Thanks, guys.